Welcome to the Event Tech Pull-Up. Join us as we take a cue and step into the future of event production. Hi, my name is Tess Vismo from iSocialX, and welcome to the Event Tech Pull-Up. My co-host and partner in crime is
Keith Johnston with Planner Wire. And Tess, I didn't screw it up today.
You've gotten so much better. So, as you know, we have Cuez, and Cuez is the place to create, to collaborate, which you know I love, and automate your rundown.
Yeah, I'm actually stoked to learn more about this one today because Cuez is the all-in-one rundown software for collaborative editing. You can do queuing, prompting, there are automations, and it's already integrated with a lot of the tools that event production people already use, things like Wirecast, vMix. There's a whole list of them that go on and on. But it's also very unique in that it's a place where planners can take part in the process of putting the show together.
Ooh, we can play too.
Right?
Nice, nice. Today, we are joined by account executive Flojan Mahu and, head of customer happiness Glenn Allow of Cuez, Stuart Mitchell, executive director of Catch the Mice, and Bob Tuvey, the publisher of Event Planner News. Welcome.
So as we mentioned, today we have Flogan and Glenn from Cuez on, Stuart from Catch the Mice. Stuart, welcome back. It's been a while.
Here again. It's great. It's great to be here. Thanks very much.
And of course, we have Bob Tuvey from Event Planner News, who has been on the show plenty of times as a guest and a co-host.
I have indeed done both. Yeah, pleasure to be back.
So I think the best thing for us to do right now is to hand it over to Flogan and Glenn and let you guys get started and give us a walkthrough of the product. And then once you guys are done, we'll come back in and we'll start asking all of those questions that I know we have. So anyway, let's get to it.
Of course, then that sounds great. Then I'm going to take over before Glenn. I'm going to give you guys a very quick, short presentation about the tool, what it is, and certainly what it does and why it was created. So introducing Cuez. So what Cuez is, in a very simple sentence, is an SAS tool that is used for live production. But why it was created? Cuez was created from our CEO, Eric, who back then was a director, and now he's the CEO of the company, because he saw this was the problem for many other production companies. Basically, many of them were going to write their script into Word and then put it into Excel, and then going to printing a lot of paper, a lot of files going back and forward. After that print is done, then you have to rewrite on it because there are changes that happen. So Eric thought of creating a tool that would be, as I like to call it, an all-in-one tool. We have the scripting, the rundown, the camera scripts, the press cards, and the prompter all into one, and all of them could be automated as well with plenty of our integrations, which some of them that I could mention would be vMix, EVS, Blackmagic, and plenty others that we can integrate from the tool directly. The tool is used from many companies. Some of them that I could mention and I'll show later on are BBC, Disney. We've done the Emmys as well. It's used by Whisper TV because that is the use case that I'm showing here as well. Basically, the guys did the Winter Olympics. They had a group in London, and then they had another group in Beijing, and everything was controlled from their home. It was a COVID time, so everything was done remotely, and everything was done seamlessly and no issues at all. But they're not the only one, as I said. There are plenty of others that we work with, and some of them you could see here. But we've done all sorts of stuff, including also universities, as you could see, and we've also worked with conferences. We've also done big events, like, for example, at Tomorrowland. So the range is quite there. Now I'm going to take it over to Glenn, and he's going to go over the tool itself, the features, and everything that's there.
Thank you, Flogan.
All right, let me show you the Cuez platform, introduce you to how everything works there, how you can use it for your specific production. And then afterwards, we will dive briefly into the automation as well to explain and show you how you can automate your production by linking Cuez and the Automator to devices like vMix, Float, Singular Live, and many, many more. So let me share my screen. So what's nice about Cuez is that you can use it for different types of productions, whether you are an event, you do a talk show, a news program, sports, esports, and so on. Cuez can be customized to your specific needs. What we see here in front of us is the overview of my specific example project, where I have a couple of what we call episodes. For us in Cuez, an episode is a name that we use for a script and a rundown. Script and a rundown is one and the same document for us, but a different view on that same information, which we will show to you in a moment. The one I have here is aimed towards our automation to show all of that. But if I quickly go here in my project switcher, you see that I have many different examples. So whether you do educational things, event management, news, podcast, and so on, you can really create separate projects with their own specific configuration, depending on your specific needs. I have in the background opened my event management episode. What we see here is when you first open this episode, you get this side-by-side view, where on the left-hand side, you have a nice compact rundown, which is usually the more technical overview of your show. And on the right-hand side, we have the script view, which is the more expanded view, where you will also see and enter the presentation text, for example, for your hosts, and maybe also for your guests. Now, in Cuez itself, we have a certain hierarchy. So that means that at the very top level, you can create what we call parts, which form the main structure of your show. So if I collapse my rundown, we can see that more clearly. We have a pre-show part, an intro, part one, for example, before the commercial break, part two after the commercial break, all the way to the closing of our show. Depending on what you are creating, these can be 2 parts, these can be 20 parts. If you look at something like the Emmys, they will have 70 parts probably. So that really depends on your show. But these form the first step in your main structure. And inside of your parts, you can then create your actual items. So that can be a news item, a topic that you are presenting, or at an event, maybe that's a certain medical topic that you will discuss, which will hold presentation, text, and slides, but they all belong in that one item, for example. Inside of the item, you then add what we call blocks. Blocks are the building blocks that you use to then add your actual content, whether it's an audio file, something like intro music, the presentation text for your host of the show, any type of graphics and video clips, and so on. Those are all separate blocks that you can add. To do so, you can either click the Add block or the plus menu in front. And then we show you this drop-down menu where you can select from all the different types of blocks that you have in this specific project. What's nice is that the user, so you yourself, can customize these blocks to your own specific needs. We always give you a set of blocks to begin with, but from there, you can take control and you can add all of the fields, colors, terminology that works in your team for your production. So if I open my block template manager, I can see here that I have the choice between what we call text blocks. These are blocks that will hold things like your presentation text, maybe some instructions that you want to give to the team, like it's at the studio, it's at the desk, on the sofa, things like that. And we have what we call cue blocks, which are usually the more technical blocks of the program, which will be your clips, your graphics, audio, straps, or lower thirds, depending on where you are from. In events, you will probably do something with slides quite often, maybe also calls, breaks, and so on. From there, you can also custom create your own block from scratch. So you can give it a name, and then you can select whether that will become a text block or a cue block. And then you can start configuring the fields that you need. So if I give you the example of a clip block, we can see here it's a clip block. I can change the name, change the color to whatever I want that we all know within the team. Purple is going to be video, for example. And then we can add all of the different fields that we may need to add all the information for our video clip. That usually involves a title. When we're talking about a clip, that will involve a media field, of course. And from there, you see that we have two extra fields here, which we call label fields. And these are actually drop-down menus that you can custom create to add more information. So for example, we can say if our clip is actually going to be a bumper, a teaser, a VT. For our sound, we can say if it's going to have sound or not. So if it's an SOT or not. All of that information can then be fine-tuned to more easily and more efficiently add to your rundown. In the add field section, we see the different types of fields that we can choose from. So we have plain text, such as a title, single line of text, text area, which can be perfect, for example, for voice-over notes that go with your video, the label field, which is the dropdown that I just showed, and of course, the media field to upload your actual video clip graphics and audio files. I'm not going to show the configuration of all of these blocks, but you can really custom create all of the fields for the different blocks that you make. So like that, we see here that in my intro part, I have my welcome item to start the show. We're going to start with some intro music. I have my presentation text for the host. I have a graphic. I didn't have a thumbnail here, but we can upload the graphic here. And then we continue with the presentation text. And like that, we add item by item in our show. We can add slides, and all the time we clearly see, is it audio, is it prompter text, is it a slide? It's immediately visible for everyone looking at the script what it is about. As mentioned, we have our script on the right and our rundown on the left. In our rundown, we can expand and collapse the view to show or hide more information depending on your specific needs. On either side, you will see the little eye icon that you can click to filter your view. So if you say, I'm a technical person and I am only interested in the clips, I can simply hide everything and focus on my video clips and work from there. That doesn't affect what my colleagues will see on their screen. So perfectly customizable to your specific needs. We also have commenting column where you can leave comments when you are working together with your team. It's going to be very important that you can leave notes for each other, of course. And in that regard, you will also see, as I have here in the top right corner, you see the little avatars with the initials or an image of your colleagues, indicating who else within your team is or was working in this specific show or in this episode rather. When they are actively working in the episode, you will see their avatar appear next to the block that they are typing in as well. So you can nicely keep track of who is doing what, where they are working. You see the text appear immediately. No one has to press save. No one has to refresh. Everything updates and is pushed automatically to the rest of the team. Now, if we see here the clip block, we see the title field that we had on it, and we see our two labels clearly indicated here. So I know it's going to be a stinger and it's sound on tape, for example, but I can click here and easily switch that to a different setting in my control down. Then on the side, we have the plus button, again, both in the script and the rundown side, where we can click to show and hide certain columns. First of all, we have different notes columns that you can choose to show. So if I have certain screen information or sound information that I want to add to my script or to my rundown, I can show these columns and start adding my notes. I can also customize what these columns should look like. I can also create new columns, by the way. But if we go into the settings of our column, we can give that cell style and even a default value. So if I were to say, for my sound, I could say, let's put it in italics, give it a specific color or text color, and maybe give it a certain default value so that when I add a new block, it always has the word microphone or something in it. So I can configure all of these settings the way I want. And then when we save our changes and we type something here, we now see our text appear the way we have it configured. So again, completely customizable by you yourself to make sure that the project works for your production. Let me hide these columns for now. There we go. Then, of course, usually you work with the whole team here in Cuez itself to really work together in this view and immediately have everyone receive the updated information on their screen in front of them. But sometimes you want to share the script or the rundown with someone outside of your team or someone that doesn't necessarily have access to Cuez itself. In that case, we have the share link here in the top right corner. You click and then you can use the share public link option. This gives you a link that you can copy, and then you can open that in a new window, or of course, you're going to send that to the other person. They will open that on their end. And when they go to that view, they will see the either rundown view, the script view, or again, the side-by-side view, depending on their preferences or on their role within the team. And what's nice is that in the shared view, you also have a tablet view that you can actually open on something like an iPad mini or a small Android tablet to replace the printed host cards. So in this way, you have a screen that's always up to date and that's easily manageable on a small tablet. You can change the font size, of course, so that it works for you. You can switch to a dark mode if that works better. And with the arrow buttons in the bottom corners, you can switch to the next or the previous item in the program. So that is our share view. Then maybe briefly about the timings, or before we do the timings, let's talk about printing. So as you've noticed, you can customize the views however you want. So you can show script and rundown side by side. I can switch the rundown to only the script or only the rundown. In each view, I can then again select which columns I may or may not want to see in my view. And that brings us to printing, or the other way of sharing a show or a script rather, is via the printing menu. Our printing uses the what you see is what you get method, meaning that whatever you selected here in the background and the column width and all of that, this is what then turns up on your print as well. From there, you can then, of course, actually print it on your printer or save it as a PDF to then keep it digital. So those are our sharing options. From the same menu at the top, again, we have the share link that you can access. You can also duplicate, access the trash. And more importantly, is from here, you can also access the block template manager to customize your project. Now that I have the timings here on my screen, so I clicked the plus button and enabled my timings column. From there, we show you estimated duration and front time by default. But as you can see, we have 8 different timings available. So you can choose what you want to see and what you do not want to see. Let's for now keep it for estimated duration and front time to not make it too complicated. For our estimated duration, you can configure your blocks to either do a calculation automatically, or you can overwrite it manually with your own value. So if I were to upload a video clip here, which we have done, then Cuez can automatically see, okay, this is a 10-second video clip, so I'm going to give that a 10-second estimated duration immediately, so we know that already. In our script view, we can do the same with our host text, for example, so with this one. We can also configure it so that Cuez can automatically calculate the duration of this text block, so that we know if you were to speak this text at 120 words per minute, how long that would take. For now, let's stick to the rundown view. So once you have your timings on the block level, so for our audio blocks, graphic blocks, and so on, whether it's automatically calculated or I can override it, so I can say this is actually 20 seconds. We now see that in blue, and I can reset it if I want. From there, on the item level, we automatically calculate the total duration of the item based on all of the blocks within that item. Again, I can override that value if I want. And on the part level, it does the same thing, shows you the total of all the items within that part. And there again, we can override that with our own custom value. So a lot of customization that we can do and have Cuez help us by doing automatic calculations. Once we have our estimated duration, then we can look all the way at the top here to our episode level timings. With the green flag, we can say when our show would go on air. With the red flag, we can say when we go off air. And with the little clock icon, we can indicate how long the show would be. Next to it, we then see a final clock that will show us either in orange, red, or green how far we are compared to our show duration. Meaning, from all of the content that we currently have in our rundown, if we are aiming for a 1.5 hour show, apparently, because this is a demo project, of course, I'm still missing 1 hour and 27 minutes worth of content. So I have a lot more work to do in my case. If I overwrite this with some custom values, make this one 45 minutes, we now see that update immediately to show that we're only missing 42 minutes. So that is always giving us a good indication of how far we are towards our show, if we are running short, running long, and to act accordingly. That final feature in the timings mode is that when we click live, we can switch between live and recorded, because of course not all shows are necessarily live. And we can also enable queue mode. In queue mode, this is when you would actually start the show or the rehearsal or the recording. You then have the black queue overview here at the top, as well as the queue column with the little play buttons. I personally like to have these at the front, so I just drag my column to the front and order the columns the way I like it. I can now press play to have my queuing start, which will show a lot of things in red because the current time and the start time of our show do not match, of course. But like this, you can queue your items. You see the progress bars that indicate you how far into your item you are. You know when to move to the next item, and so on. If you want to add more information, you can also add your actual duration, actual start time, and actual end time to keep track of how long you have been spending in that specific item, so 30-something seconds, when we pressed play to start our item, and when we pressed stop or the next play button to move to our next. So all of that timing information we can keep track of. Finally, we also have a follow function so that when the timing is done by one person within your team, showrunner, PA, whoever it may be, the rest of the team might want to follow along with all this queuing, so they can use the follow mode to follow what I am doing in this specific case. What happens is that they can also then keep track with the red marked item. And whenever you move to the next item, the script scrolls automatically to have the actively queued item be at the top of their screen. So you know that the team is always looking at the correct item that you are currently working on. So that is a very, very brief overview of Cuez itself, where you will be building the rundown that will then go to your show and also to your automation, of course. So now that we know how Cuez itself works by building our script and rundown using our different blocks and specifically our queue blocks, now we can talk also about our automation. For that, I have a different project in my Automator project where I have some things prepared specifically to show on our vMix, FlowX, and so on. Now, first of all, you will see that in your project, you have the Automator button, from which you get this little pop-up model. You can download the Automator with the first link, go to our Help Center, the second link, and then at the bottom, you see all of the connections that you have available to your project. For me, everything is set up so they're all saying paired, but normally you have a pair button where you can then copy a key to paste into what we call our Automator application. Our Automator application is, once installed, it runs in the background as this small red window that basically runs a web service that you can access by default on this link. So it always shows you can just click it and go there. You can customize the port depending on the settings within your infrastructure. And then when you go to the Automator, go one screen back actually, this is your first screen. So you end up in your Automator project with all of the episodes that you have available in that project. When we then load our episodes, whatever we created in Cuez, so again, what we created here in the background is now loaded into our Automator application, including all of the graphics that we uploaded, all of the video clips, audio files, everything is now here and is always up to date. So if I were to change something in Cuez itself, or if one of my team members changes something, what I see here in the Automator will update immediately as well. One of the first steps you will do is add your devices in the top right corner. As you can see, I have a couple of them. So I'm using the visflowix for some lower thirds. Uno by Singular Life, I'm using to do some scoreboard things in my demo that we usually do for sports. vMix, which is going to be the center of everything, where all of my channels or inputs come together and then go out to my broadcast. And well, it's a fake PTZ camera just for demonstration purposes. I have added here as well. Whenever you want to add a new device, just click Add New Device. And then you can select here from the drop-down list from all of the devices we already have, which you see is a pretty long list already. But every week or every 2 weeks, new devices get added. So the list keeps on growing. Whichever device you then select, we automatically give you all of the necessary fields to fill in to connect that device with the Automator. And for most devices, we already enter the default values, such as here with vMix, meaning that all I have to do is give it a name, select where media needs to be downloaded so that the vMix can access it. And we're pretty much golden, and the device is shown as online. So very, very easy to set up. So if I show you that with my vMix that is actually configured, it's the same default information, but now I have my download folders and I have selected which of my different block types I'm going to treat with my vMix. So in my case, clips, graphics, audios, and slides, which are also graphics for me. The same works for the other devices, but for Flowix, Uno, Singular Life, it's even easier. You just need one token that you need to get from your visflowix setup, for example, paste it in the Automator, done, your device is now online. Once we have our devices, we can then start playing around with them. And what we do is, for example, in front of our clip, we're going to click our 3 dots, go to Configure Automation, and we can now start telling all of our different devices what we want them to do when we trigger our clip. We can do that in different ways. I'm not going to go into too much detail for all of them. We have amazing webinars for those, but we have steps that you can do when you click on cue, which means when I click my clip, what do I want to do on that click? I can program actions below a step button. Step button are like my play and stop button that I have here. I can automate actions based on timecode information. I can automate next actions, meaning if my card is the next one in the rundown, I can do something. For example, put it ready in a preview monitor so that the host or the guests know what the next upcoming item would be. And I can program blur actions, meaning that once I leave my clip to go to the next one, what do I still want to do on the clip that I just left? So many, many different ways of automating. How you then automate is always in the exact same way. You first add an automation where you then select if you want to do that always or conditionally, because we can use conditions. For example, we do that with our lower thirds. It's a big difference if you only want to use a title strap, or if you have a title and a function, maybe also a location or a live indicator. You can automate all of that with conditions as well. So you select the conditionality, then you select on which device you want to do your action. So let's say on our vMix, and I'm basically going to recreate what we have above here. Depending on the device you selected, you can then choose from all of the functions available for that device. So maybe something like a TriCaster might have 9 functions, but here a vMix, for example, has 485. So that always depends on the device. So here we can first say that we want to add our clip towards our vMix. So we can do that with the list add function. We then have to say in which of our inputs in vMix we want that clip to end up. Let's say input A. And what do we want to send to that input? Well, it's from our clip card or block, the media field. Done. It's that easy to send your video clip to your vMix. From there, you can add as many functions as you want or need for what you're trying to achieve. So in my case, I'm actually working with a list input type in vMix that I first empty, then I send my clip, and then I put it in preview, and then I can press play as well. What I actually use, because this one is grayed out, just as an example, the most basic example. What I do is, again, one step further, but you can go as far as you want. I use variables so that I can easily switch between 2 clip inputs without a black frame in between. And I'm actually sending my clip to an input to a preview first, it's not going immediately in my broadcast. So my first click sends it to preview, and then I have my step button where I'm actually going to send a play command to bring it to my broadcast, and I can also pause it from here. The same principle applies for my graphic cards. I do a set image command on my vMix, and I have a step button to bring it in. And maybe a last example before I show you in vMix what actually happens. A lower third is a perfect example of conditions where I say if a tag, this is a drop-down menu with a label field that I created where I can indicate, do I want to mention that it's live? Maybe it's on location. Is it breaking news? All of these settings will trigger a different design of lower third, which I'll show you in a moment. And all of that happens automatically based on the information that I have here in my rundown. But as you can see, you can go very, very far with this if you want. So if I bring my screen down a little bit to show you the vMix in the background, let me have this one as well, and this one as well. There we go. So on the left, we see the preview input of our vMix, and on the right, you see what would go into broadcast. By the way, I'm going to control this not with my mouse, but with keyboard shortcuts, meaning that anyone controlling the Automator can simply use their keyboard, whether it's with the space bar, arrow buttons, or even program those buttons on a Stream Deck, for example. Just like that, you can control the entire Automator. So if I press my arrow right, I'm going to bring my image into my broadcast, arrow down to bring my clip into my preview on the left, arrow to the right to start playing my video clip. I'm now also going to switch on my automatic scrolling so that it scrolls to the top, easier to keep track of everything. My next clip goes into preview. I can press play. I'm not going to play all the clips in their entirety, just as an example. Now I'm bringing my lower third on top, and it goes out automatically because I have configured it that way. I can trigger a different design lower third, and again, automatically it goes away, and so on. So just like that, I have at the bottom here a nice lower third showcase. Maybe the slides one is an interesting one as well, seeing that we're talking about events. So I can jump completely to a different section. I can trigger my slide. This one I have configured to come into my broadcast immediately, and I have more step buttons. I can bring my graphic in, but I already had that layer in, which is why it's shown. And I can bring in the lower third, which is using information that is in the card itself, not in a separate lower third. So that again is possible as well. And then finally, we have a lower third showcase to show you. So you can easily automate with the conditions, single line straps or lower thirds, double lines with the function of the person. You can add a third one for the location, and so on. With a live tag in the top right corner, I have 15 or so of these examples. I won't show all of them to you, but I think you get the idea. That is very briefly our Automator. We can talk about the Automator for 45 minutes on its own because we have more buttons at the top. We have variables, macros, pretty much anything you want or may need for your production. We probably have in the Automator, but happy to talk about that when we have more time.
So I actually like amazing things, and this is actually kind of amazing. You know, as a production person, for me, I actually looked right at this and went, oh my God, I could use this tomorrow, right? It's that easy for me to get my head wrapped around it. But Stuart, since you're the one who's going to be bringing this to planners in the UK and everywhere for that matter, you know, what are your thoughts about Cuez and actually the event industry as a whole for planners?
Oh my God, I love it as well. And I remember when I first time I saw this in action, it just simplified everything up until a point, because I'm not the technical guy. When you did the Automator show around, yes, that started going over my head and yeah, absolutely lost me. And I think that will lose a lot of the event planners, as it were, and hands over to the AV team to deliver it. But what I would say is we've all experienced the reams and reams of paper that have been printed out, version 1, version 61, and it keeps changing. The CEO never had his notes on time when you're putting together a conference. Those can just be slotted in literally the day or hour before, minute before, and can pop straight in. The other thing which I love about it is there are so many technophobes out there that you can still print something off if someone is adamant it needs to be printed off, because you do get that dinosaur in the room that still needs to take that piece of paper and learn it before they go on stage. Some will be using the teleprompts, but yeah, it's just a phenomenal tool, and I can't wait to take it to market in the UK. It's awesome.
Well, and I think, you know, this is actually one part of the event planning process that was always oddly disjointed, right? Planners would put together the show, and they usually use Excel, and they call it their run of show, but it really wasn't. It was just their flow for the day. And they would send it off to the AV folks, who would then put it into something where this is actually now where both can actually work together, right? The planner can be in here.
You're right. You always had that huge script, 50, 60 pages, even for an award ceremony, with different colors representing different things. It's stage left. Johnny comes on stage from the left, sits down, and you've got all those little notes which are scribbled in your thing, and then Janet takes over as the MC or whatever it is, and this just makes it so much easier.
Well, it also prevents, you've got, back at the AV table at the event, everyone has their Excel spreadsheets that they've printed out, and everyone's crossing stuff off as they go, but then whoever is behind the stage is on the last version.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're missing a bit, and they've missed, oh my goodness, where's VT? What sting are we going to play? Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the other point I love about it is it's intelligent, so that if you have a huge amount of waffle, which I always do when I put my script in, it gives you timings that actually we're going to be 20 minutes over schedule, and you've got to cut your script, Stuart, and you stick to it. Otherwise, we're going to be there to midnight, and the poor AV team are going to have a late get out.
And that actually blew me away. But actually, here, question for Glenn and Vlogan. If I know how many words per minute a particular speaker speaks, can I put that in for that individual and not have it be across to all, or?
So in the current implementation, not yet. Right now, we do the automatic calculation based on the average, which is going to be 120 words per minute. But on the roadmap, I don't have the exact date for when it will be final. But on the roadmap is that for each of your different text blocks, so if I briefly show you the block template manager again, if, for example, you want to create a block for host 1 and a separate block for host 2, you will be able to set different settings for each host. If one of you talks fast and the other talks slow, you will then be able to fine tune. So coming soon to Cuez.
Yeah, and that's really cool, right? Because when Tess and I are talking, or she and I present often together, she's actually a faster talker than I am and can impart more information in a shorter amount of time. Bob, so as the guy in the room who has never sat at the AV table and not on the production side, what are your initial thoughts on that?
It's an amazing platform to be using, because we've seen, the automation, the amount of information. I like the fact that it tracks and scrolls up as it goes along. But from an event planner's point of view, there's only a small part of this that an event planner is actually going to use. This is for the AV team. This is what they are going to keep track of everything. So with that in mind, what is the learning curve like for an event planner to understand their part of it?
Yeah. So what is nice is that when you first start out with Cuez, when you first register your account and create your first project, we always give you what we call the standard episodes sample. That has a bit of content in it already, so some clips, some graphics, some lorem ipsum text, to help you understand, okay, what is meant with parts and items, and how do I use these blocks? So that already helps you in that first step. From there, we have our built-in chat, which will give you messages regularly to help you find certain help information. We have webinars. We have different types of recordings. We have over 115 articles in our help center. So depending on the information you are looking for, you can just dive here in the help center, say, okay, I'm a video guy. I don't want to read a wall of text. I'm going to look at a quick 5-minute video, or I'm a more techie person. I want a 45-minute video with all the details. Everything is here. If you want to do a deep dive into a specific topic, you can go in that specific collection, find out how to customize your own specific box, video-wise, text-wise. It's all explained here to help you. And to bring it back to our chat, we have our built-in chat system where you see it here. This is dynamically calculated. I didn't set this on purpose for this call, but during normal business times in the European time zone, we reply in under 5 minutes. So if you have a question for us, just send us a chat message from within Cuez and you will have an answer pretty much straight away. We're not a service where you have to wait until the next day or even the next week sometimes. 5 minutes, you have your reply. If you send us a message at midnight, you'll have to wait until the next morning, but first thing in the morning, you'll get your answer from us as well.
And Tess, what are your thoughts on the platform? Because you're one of those rare people that actually goes across both, right? You're a planner and you also know production. So kind of what are your thoughts on something like Cuez?
Well, I think it's a gift. I'm very excited about the product. I think it helps from the simplicity of things. I think that it helps organize the process into a way in which everyone in the journey of an event has the ability to participate and view, in a back channel. I think especially with a process like as complicated as event logistics can be and production can be, is very key, because there's so many different new kind of players in our particular industry who have joined the quote unquote production realm. I think just the fact that you're actually be able to view the Cuez and see it from an outside perspective and know what actually is going on is very key. So from a tech perspective, I'm excited about it, but also from a planner's perspective, because then now hopefully this particular tool can help inform the planner on being able to plan better, being able to make certain kinds of decisions that will make the process better for those who actually have to execute. I love to execute events, but oftentimes planners are more deers in headlines. I've planned it, I've wrote it, now let me kind of have a hands-off perspective. But now if they are able to kind of see the process and see what happens, hopefully, not touch it, but see it, they can kind of be informed for the future, and hopefully informed along the way. And I'm hoping that the way I see the tool built is that it can be built in a way that you can, in the plan, building the agenda, the scripts, and all of that. So then, again, the planner can see for the future how he or she like the event to flow, and more work hand in hand with the production team instead of hands off. So that's kind of how I see the product in a sense.
And this is actually a really good opportunity for planners to actually learn some new things.
Right.
There are because normally when something is coming into the industry, it's up for whatever it is up to whatever is coming in to learn meeting planners nomenclature, right? Whereas this is kind of flipping it on its head, right? The audio video production side has always existed. So it's the planners who are new to that side. So they actually have to learn some new things. They've got to learn what a stinger is, right? They've got to learn what a lower third is. But I think it makes everyone better, right? When we do this.
It does. And Keith, just not to interrupt you, but Glenn and Logan, I think just kudos to the developers, right? For making a tool that is logical in its sense. It's not so far geeky and techy that the average person can't pick it up. So what I mean by that is just thinking about independent planners, for instance. We have to wear lots of hats for lots of different clients. I could see this tool in the pocket of several independent planners who kind of like to produce a little here and there, or kind of like to really truly do event design, right? To help us design better, to help manage very various different clients to be able to service them. Okay, think about all of the people who have gone through learning how to produce and stream both virtual and in person and per se, and that's kind of like their business. To me, this is a great weapon for them to actually use. So it's not just always thinking about the big as a tool for people who can and assist in the process. So I think we should think about it in various different ways. And I'm very interested to see the roadmap for the future.
Yeah, and Tessa, your internet is starting to go a little wonky again, but we did catch all that. But you know what my biggest fear
Okay.
is, or my biggest hope is that the like I know my buddy Marv, who owns AVP here in Chicago, audiovisual production company. This is the kind of stuff he jumps all over, right? He's like, "This is amazing. We should use this."
Mm-hmm.
You know, hopefully we can get those companies like the Encores of the world to understand this so that again planners can participate in the process, because ultimately they need to realize that tools like this are going to make their lives easier.
It was really interesting to hear what Tess said actually about event design. Early this year, we did a roadshow across the UK and published a state of the industry roadmap and report about engagement and event design. And weirdly, you know, everyone said about Zoom fatigue and how it's over, virtual's over. One of the things that was definitely not over was moving from a pretty basic format of presentation to more of a professional TV studio presentation with proper VT, proper lower thirds, proper transitions, proper breaks when we need it, you know, rather than just a screen over the top and death by PowerPoint. This moves it and moves where we should be from a pretty basic fundamental service into a full TV production, and gives event planners the tools to be able to do it, and then they can tag team with their AV team. I think it's just a game changer,
It is.
and I love it. I'm really excited.
Well, and you know
Yeah.
what? For years, everyone has been saying that conferences, events, organizations need to act more like media companies going into the late 2020s and into the 2030s. This is how you do it.
You're absolutely right. And if it's done properly beforehand and people get more and more used to it, it will also save a lot of post production,
Oh yeah.
Yes.
because your content that is already nicely framed and nicely linked in and transitioned can just be chunked up and put onto social, and you'll get huge return on investment from it. It will save you a lot of time with your post production, and using those little VT clips on social. I think it's awesome.
For those of you that plan to be in Amsterdam, September 15th through the 18th, you can actually catch Cuez at the International Broadcasting Convention. And if you're there on the 17th, you'll even run into Stuart Mitchell.
Ooh. So that means, Keith, since it's in Amsterdam, I can invite all of my cousins, my Visno cousins who live in Amsterdam.